Give them the stuff to
Go, Sharon.
Okay, all right, we're ready to roll here. So welcome everyone this evening, and I'll call the meeting to order. Would you like to join us with the Pledge Allegiance to the flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, Mary, roll call.
Olson.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kellum.
Here.
Kupczynski.
Here.
Coburn.
Here.
Okay, all right, and first scheduled business is communication, and this item is accepting Kristen Richardson's resignation from the Planning Commission. This is a email copy on page 2, so council, what would you like to do with this item?
I move that we accept her resignation, but send her a letter of thanks.
Second.
Right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. And next is business from the public, and we had one of our wonderful organizers from our Veterans Day Parade that would like to come up and say a few words. Patty?
Good evening. My name is Patty Louisiana. My address is 1175 Southwest Timian in Corvallis. Louisiana is spelled just like the state, Louisiana. And I would like to come before the City Council, Mayor Canopa and City Council members, and thank you once again for assisting in putting on the Veterans Day Parade, what the city does, and with our organization. It was, again, I think, the largest parade west of the Mississippi, no doubt. We had 222 entries this year. We had a beautiful flyover, and it was low and it was fast, and everything got off at 11 o'clock. I don't have the final count of the motorcycles, but between 350 and 400 motorcycles. And then we were joined by wonderful lead color guard, followed by our Korean War veterans. And to see those gentlemen and women that told me specifically they had never been specifically put up front in the parade. They had never been honored like that. And it was wonderful to see them. In the mixed was Rear Admiral Nancy Norton, who has a family connection here, but she came from Washington, D.C. to join us not only for the banquet the night before, but to be in the parade and stayed for the entire parade. And she was a keynote speaker for the night before and also at the memorial service. We also had an additional flag officer. We had Major General Michael Stencil, the Adjutant General for the state of Oregon. He has moved up from the Air National Guard, so it was wonderful to have the flyover to commemorate him being the Adjutant General for the state of Oregon. So we had wonderful city entries, we had wonderful community entries, and everybody stayed on key. The parade started off at 11 o'clock. The last entry was on at 1:14, so we made our time limit for ODOT. Though the parade, it starts and stops, it might have been another 45 minutes to an hour before the last entry got off the parade route, but the Albany Police Department does a fabulous job being right at the very end and opening the streets as the parade goes by. And when you have a day that everyone says it's going to be a rainy day, I watched from 10 days out, and I knew it was going to be beautiful, because when you go on and watch hour by hour, and you see that by 9 or 10 o'clock the rain's going to be stopping, then I never looked at the weather again. Because it's something called parade magic, and I don't know how we are so lucky, but the last 6 years we have not had it rain on the parade. And the spectators might not have been on the sidewalks by 9 o'clock, but by 10:30 the sidewalks were filled. And I've always said that the spectators for the parade are as much a part of the parade as everyone in the parade. There are shouts and welcome home. There are people that will come from the parade route into the crowd to thank the different veterans that they do see. So it's a community affair. It's fabulous to put it together. I'm honored to. It's a lot of work, but we do it right.
You sure do.
Thank you.
Boy, extremely, you do it right. So I like that about Parade Magic, and I hope that we do have that for Sunday night when we have our twice around Christmas parade.
Oh, it'll be perfect. It'll be wonderful.
I think it was last year. I think it started raining as soon as everything got over with. Then it started raining. But so we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. Admiral Norton was very pleasant to visit with, so she wanted to have coffee with me after the parade, so we spent some time and chatted, and then yesterday in the mail I received a very nice note from her, but she was, it was a real treat to be able to visit with her and hear her experiences, and yeah, so it was an honor having her here in our parade.
It was wonderful to have her here, and I reminded her that, there might be other parades that she goes to see, but she needs to always remember that what Albany has is so special. It truly is.
Oh,
and
yeah.
for her to stay and watch the entire thing, and all of the officers to do that at the reviewing stand, and go down and welcoming the grand marshals that come in and sit and watch the parade, they're truly humbled by the experience and the years of commitment and service to our country that we have in the parade. So what I would like to do is present this to the City Council and the City of Albany.
Oh, that is just beautiful.
You have a connection with the frame shop.
Oh, yeah, I wonder who.
So
Oh,
thank
that
you very
is so
much.
nice. Thank you, Patty, so much. So thank you. So,
Any questions? And if they're not, that's okay. Because we did get some
This is
stuff
great.
afterwards, so thank you very much.
yeah.
Just,
oh, you
just a
deserved it.
statement, Patty, we
You
can
bet.
probably expect to be, for it to be bigger and better next year, right?
It'll be 65 years, absolutely.
Wow.
65 years that Albany has put on a Veterans Day parade and the community involvement. I've had some people say, well, it should only be for veterans, and I've had some people say, well, the veterans are always up front, it should be for the community, and I say it should be both. It is a Veterans Day parade with community involvement, and it's fabulous. And so many of my best story is from Jim Willis. When Jim Willis was 8 years old, he walked first in the parade holding his dad's hand, and he was our Grand Marshal a few years ago. And all the things that he has been able to accomplish in his time, and working for the state police and the county and an Air Force veteran, and being the director of Department of Veterans Affairs for the state of Oregon, and then coming back and saying, but I love the parade, and that's why we have the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts in it, and the Girl Scouts and the bands and everyone in it, because it is a community event, and it is something so great for the veterans also.
Oh, it
But yes,
was.
65 years next year, so we're going to get
Wow.
started after the first of the year,
Oh,
planning
you
for
do
that.
such a fantastic job. We are very fortunate to have you for
Thank you very
coordinating
much.
it. So it just went off like a T, just
It
perfectly.
did, it did. I
Except
thought
you almost
parade-
had an old trolley that was going to hold it up if we hadn't got that battery jump.
I think there are some draft horses in the parade. We could have brought those up. And the National Guard always has a tow truck, so we got you covered. Thank you very
so
much.
Patty. Thank you, yeah. And Patty gave me the contact information for the young man. His grandpa was one that was in the parade that jumped our trolley, so I wanted to get his information so I could send him a thank you for helping us out. Or it was going to be everybody pushing that old trolley through the parade, but yeah, thank you, Patty. So, okay, anyone else from business from the public? So, okay, yeah, Tom?
It's Tom Cordier, 2240 Northwest Park Terrace in Albany. I have a comment about the parade. I had a chance to speak to Admiral Norton as well, and gave her a thumbnail sketch of Teledyne Hua Chang and Hua Chang's history in the nuclear navy. And spoke about Admiral Dubois, who was the first commanding officer of the USS Enterprise, the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. And she told me that she served on the Enterprise, and I didn't know that. So it's kind of a, and her brother who came here with her knows about the connection, and he promised me that he would give her more than my thumbnail sketch.
Oh, that's great, yeah. Yeah, she's pretty impressive, so yeah. Thank you, Tom. Anyone else from business from the public? Okay, not seeing anyone. All right, council, let's see. On page 3, you have an ordinance, and this one is declaring a ban on recreational marijuana producers. And would you like to read the first reading?
An ordinance of the City of Albany declaring a ban on recreational marijuana producers, recreational marijuana processors, recreational marijuana wholesalers, and/or recreational marijuana retailers, referring ordinance and declaring an emergency.
Okay.
Move that the ordinance be read a second time in title only.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, all right,
Can I
and
do a
we
roll
kind of
call vote
expected.
for the record, please?
Oh, yep, you sure may.
Olson,
No.
Collins,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kellum,
Yes.
Kopsinski.
No.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, and since that had a one no is at least, and that is held over to our next council meeting. Okay, and next is some adoptions of resolutions, and first is on page 7. This is the amending the South Santiam Enterprise Zone, and Mr. John, is John still here? If he wanted to come forward, was there any questions of John?
John Pascone, 435 West First Avenue, Albany. We've done this several times before. This is a boundary change for the South Santiam Enterprise Zone. And if you recall, years ago, we sort of were allowed to use some of the South Santiam Enterprise Zone out of Lebanon. They had some space, and we were allowed to put some of our property in their zone. And at that time, the limit was 12 square miles, and Lebanon was 11 square miles. So we used to add parcel by parcel of our industrial property to the zone. Legislature before last, they allowed the zones to go up to 15 square miles, and we added some more property. And recently, we found out that there was a food processor looking to co-locate with Snow Temp across the street. There's some industrial ground, there's some ground there that's hopefully will be rezoned industrial, but it's GAP's property that's for sale. So what prompted this change was this food processor hopefully will locate across the street from Snow Temp. Then while we were doing this, since it's such a big problem, you have to get GIS involved to do remapping and everything. Found out that Sean Stevens, our business development officer with the state of Oregon, was talking to Ferris Lumber out in Mill City area, and they found that some of their property was never added to the zone because we can only add certain parcels at certain times. And then while we were doing that, we looked at some property in Scio that we're going to add and a few pieces in Tangent. So we're going from 14.04 square miles to 14.94 square miles, and we're adding about 576 acres. So the only thing that affects Albany is that GAP's property of about 20 acres.
Okay, all right. Questions? All right, council, what would you like to do with this resolution?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion
Thank you very
carried.
much.
Thank you, John. Okay, and next is a resolution on page 11, and this would be authorizing for the farm lease of the South Albany Community Park property that is down on Ellingson and Lochner Lane. This was purchased quite a few years ago, and so it hasn't been developed, so it's just been leased out. So, council, do you have questions of Ed Hodney, or I'll entertain a motion?
Move adoption of the resolution on page 11.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried.
Mayor, just for the public, it's a continuation, since we bought the parcel, but we haven't put it to use yet for parks. The Parks Department has been leasing it back to the farmer that previously farmed it, and we're continuing that practice and receiving revenue off of that land on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Okay, next, there is a resolution on page 15, and this is amending the downtown parking restrictions. This one, and Downtown Association is here if you have any questions over this, but this would be moving a 30-minute customer parking spot to a 3-hour customer spot.
Move to approve?
Move to approve? Okay. All right, any questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, all right, that is approved, and thank you, Peggy and Jerry. And I also think that, I understand that the Novaks wanted to come up and talk about parking on Second? Yes? Okay, Matilda?
So, I am Matilda Novak. Do I need to say that part when you?
Yep.
Okay, I
Yep.
still do.
The
Okay.
the tape always has
Matilda
to
Novak,
record it.
3383 Summerhill Place Northwest, Albany, Oregon. So, first of all, thank you. Thank you to the entire council and you for giving us an opportunity to speak in not a regular time when we're not officially on the agenda. I am still hopeful that one day we'll be officially on the agenda and be able to, but we have some friends here as well who represent various businesses downtown, and there are actually a host of others who weren't able to be here, so, you know, it's probably all working for the best. But what I would like to do, you've all received, not staff, but council and the mayor have received an email from my little sister, Kay Marie. So she shared some concerns, and I guess that'll be responded to eventually, but I thank you for being the opportunity to be heard, and I just want to share some notes that she wrote, my sister, that she doesn't have the whatever to read. So here we go. I mean, because I get to do this. So, Mr. Crandall at the last CARA meeting proposed one of the best arguments for increased parking that we've heard. He spoke of 9/11 and the closing of several parking spots in front of businesses. Mr. Crandall reported that the businesses suffered a 50% loss of sales while the parking spots were blocked and had a 50% increase when the spots were reopened. He said that the perception of parking, or lack thereof, greatly affected the success of the businesses around which it was centered. The perception that there is no parking downtown is affecting businesses. Whether this perception is accurate or not, it is affecting business. We've had former regular customers apologize to us for not coming into the restaurant, and their explanation for why they can no longer visit as often is because of the lack of parking. People are more comfortable and confident with pull-in parking and will choose to frequent businesses that have easily accessible parking. We've had a group of little old people who had to walk 3 blocks to our location because there was no place for their bus to park. It took them 40 minutes to walk the 3 blocks to our building. The parking situation impacted our ability to properly meet the needs of our customers. We have tour buses scheduled for this spring and summer. Where will they park? The more popular downtown becomes, the greater the need for parking. We need loading zones in front of buildings and bus parking. And I'm sure there's more I could say, but I'm going to yield to some of my fellow Second Avenue business owner friends, and thank you again for the opportunity to share some of our concerns tonight. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Matilda.
Mayor,
Questions?
while they're coming up, you and I spoke a little bit outside about having some kind of a map that shows various places that one can be generated.
Right.
While this is all going on, that we could maybe have made or have somebody make so that it could be given back out to the Second Avenue folks?
I talked with Kate earlier to see if, and staff didn't have time to do up the map, but did some of the distances, but I think it would be very helpful to really see and show your customers how it's not that much farther than if they're walking from Target to, or Safeway. So Safeway to the end of their parking lot is around 300 feet. From your door over to Broad Album is about the same for 300 feet. From Novak's door to Two Rivers parking lot is 440. So Costco to the middle of their parking lot is 500 feet. So, and Fred Meyer's is about 220. So it's not, it's the perception. People think if they can't park up front, it's a long distance. So I think it was a week ago Saturday night, we came in and ate at Novak's. So we had parked on 3rd and Broad Albany, and there was nobody parked on the west side at all. And I had my husband go, will you time it, how long it takes us to walk? 90 seconds it took us to walk. So for someone to go 3 blocks and take 45 minutes, I mean, a tour bus can drop off at a front door, then they can go and park. But, so, and then there was actually 5 spaces available on the block from Broad Albany to Ellsworth. So this was Saturday night at 6:20. So,
And again, the example that I gave was daytime and elderly folks with walk.
yeah,
So it's not hard for someone like me to walk 3 blocks, and I'm happy to.
Right.
I want to. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna go leave.
so this was also on where the old post office building. All of that parking was empty, and which is very unfortunate, because it'd be nice to work out a deal with the owners, because they don't use it in the evening and on weekends. So we've got to really see if we can work out a deal with them to be able to use that for restaurant space or put for senior parking there too. So I think that's something that would expedite the process to get parking. I mean, even if we went down the path of diagonal, could take a long time before we ever got diagonal for a reconstruction project. But if we can work out with those owners, would really, I think, give you some parkings, a lot sooner. But, yeah, that was just kind of what I noticed. If we could have a map done, showing those distances might be easy when you have a customer that say, it's so far to walk, and then you can say, here, how about look at this map? It's not much different than when you're going to Costco or going to Fred Meyer's or something, so it might end up helping, but, yeah. Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I got a question on your thing, but I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Tim Benfield, Benfield, and I'm with the building at 220 2nd Street in Albany. When just the one example you used was the middle of the parking lot at Costco. Are you counting both parking lots? Because I know I'm 50 and in great health, but I never park in the middle. Everybody tries to park at the very front.
Right.
So that's a little misleading, because nobody in their right mind is, well, I'm going to park in the middle.
Right.
It's a little misleading to say that. Well, they got plenty of spaces. Costco has a ton,
No,
but people
he
will
was-
circle that
Right.
repeatedly to find
Right.
one right
You
next
do.
to
No,
the
this was measuring from the front door to a certain part of a parking lot, just doing a comparison of.
Oh, I understand, but I mean,
Yeah.
that parking lot in
Oh, it's
Costco,
huge.
if you're counting the entire parking lot, that's a ways out there, and nobody parks out there even in their busiest times almost.
This was measuring to the middle of the parking lot.
But which
Yeah.
parking lot, both or just the
Oh.
front one?
That I don't know. Once we get a map going, you'll be able
Okay,
to see.
that was just my question, because I was
Yeah.
thinking, I don't even park in
can
the back of
define it on a
Safeway
map.
either, but that's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
just me. I didn't draw up a map or anything, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm just not really good at drawing, and I'm probably be a little bit of an informal presentation. I walk the streets with my wife on dates sometimes back through there, and I came up with an idea on diagonal parking. And I've listened to 2 of the presentations here so far, and one of the things they kept talking, and can I stand? Because I'm not a sit-down kind of guy. One of the things I noticed is everybody keeps talking about bulb outs on these sidewalks. What about bulb ends? Right now, you already have bulb ends going on. You have trees planted and benches and stuff. Those trees are planted. Nobody walks down the sidewalk and goes,
Get
"Oh,
closer to the
tree's
microphone,
gone,
please."
I'll walk back down."
Tim, you're going to get by the microphone.
Sorry.
Or it won't pick you up.
Nobody.
There you go.
I'm sorry, you have. But nobody walks and goes, okay, well, the tree's gone, now I'm going to walk back out into that empty space. No, they just go right down the path that you currently have, which is about 5 feet going down the sidewalk. And passing people, they'll either go single file, double, triple, people can pass there. So it's not a problem passing on that little bit. So if you took the sidewalk out that's not currently being used and have bulb outs then with that tree, still you don't have to move a tree. Then you have space to keep both lanes of traffic, a bike lane, and diagonal parking on both sides of the street. And you've not lost any real estate as far as sidewalks are concerned. I just don't understand why that's not even been considered. Everybody keeps going, well, you got to have it on one side or take a whole lane out. No, I'm not asking to take the sidewalk partially out. Leave the bulb outs, the bulb ends right now, turn them into bulb outs. And on 2nd Street, do we really need park benches? I like the one in front of Novak's, that's a really nice one. But I look over by Vault 244, it has a lot of benches that are not being used, except at the wrong time of night by the wrong type of people, in my opinion. That's my personal opinion, sorry. But I think it's, there's sacrifices that would have to be made. Yeah, you're not going to have 20 feet wide sidewalks, but right now you don't theoretically have 20-foot wide sidewalks now. You have about 5-foot wide sidewalks on each side with trees planted that obstruct the traffic. So you're not losing anything, and if you could have one of your engineers or one of your people that are better at this than me design that or look into that, and if that would actually gain, I'm betting we could almost 150% more parking if we could do that. And yes, it's a little self-serving, I have a business there, but I think it'll help everybody. And try walking up and down it and see. You will not lose real estate. People do not go, oh, well, I'm going into this big area just to turn around and walk back in because it's not efficient. So basically, it's just wasted space right now.
All right.
No.
Thank you,
Okay,
Tim.
sorry.
Thank you.
And that's it. Any questions or anything, just let me know, and I'm easy to get in touch with. Thank you. guys.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Yes, yes, ma'am.
My name's Angela Childs, 35845 Southwest Riverside Drive, Albany. I own Mother Goose Resale. I just recently moved down to downtown because it was so inviting, so welcoming. We'll help you do anything you can. I have people from several banks around me park in front of my store, and my customers cannot park. They get a free pass to park in front of my store while they have parking lots to park in. Their employees park in my customer parking areas. The people that live in the apartments above me park in my customer parking areas because Parkwise offers a $5 a month residential pass. Well, the people that actually bring people to downtown, the employees, the owners, and the workers of these businesses pay $20 a month. I don't see how the people that actually bring business downtown, that you all want to come downtown, have to pay more to work downtown. I get tired of people that work on 4th Street parking in front of my shop when they can park in front of their own shops. I think it's something you all need to really look at seriously. You want us to come downtown with our businesses, yet when we come downtown, our customers don't follow us because they can't park in front of our shops. I own a kids resale shop. I have pregnant mothers and mothers with young children. They don't want to walk 3 blocks. They don't want to walk from Front Street to my shop. They won't. Something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. And for your information, though, the Parkwise and the enforcement, that program is the Downtown Association. So the City Council does not do any sort of regulation over over that enforcement part, yeah. But I am the liaison to the Downtown Association, so I will bring it up and, and talk with Downtown Association about your concerns, so. And I think they're here to even hear the concern, but we can chat about it and see if maybe there can be some sort of review on some of the fees on that, but we can check into that. Thank you. Yeah, Matilda?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in regard to Angela who just spoke.
You have to come to the podium. Yeah, Matilda, tape needs to pick you up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do want this noted for the record because she didn't mention it, but Angela, who just spoke with Mother Goose, she's on 3rd Street. So 3rd Street is being looked at along with 2nd Street, and I'm so thankful she's here because, you see us few business owners, and you need to understand that we represent many more. She represents 3rd Street right now on her own. We represent a host of other businesses. Some of them, if you're on the council, you've received notes that I've forwarded to you from them. But it's like when they say call Congress. Every phone call represents hundreds. So please know, though we are few, we speak on behalf of many.
Okay, thanks, Matilda. Okay, anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I said I wasn't going to speak. Tina Ramirez, 530 10th Avenue Southwest. I also have a business on 2nd Street. I just the side angle parking, which I've never really thought was a big deal. I thought, okay, the whole tree part of it, maybe if those were handicap spots, and then you could keep the trees, and you could maybe still do the angled parking. Just a thought after listening to what everybody had to say. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Tina. Okay, yes, sir.
How you doing? I'm Mike Gornick. I own and operate the Fun Zone at 223 Southwest 2nd Avenue. Basically just want to echo what Tim had mentioned. I do believe that there's an opportunity to reduce the size of the sidewalks and do kind of an angled parking on both sides of the street. It's a selfish thing, basically, because, again, we have customers that have little kids, and if anybody's known that you're getting kids out of a baby seat or anything like that, they could be on either side of the car. And when I have people that are getting baby seat, kids out of the cars or whatever, there's basically a lane of traffic right next to them, so we're right behind them as they're doing that. Angled parking helps out with that situation, only because the simple fact is that they're kind of barricaded on both sides by either nothing or an actual vehicle. And something to consider is that downtown Albany is getting, eventually we're going to have the carousel here. It's going to be more family friendly. It's just headed that direction. It's just something to think about. All right, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right, anyone else? Okay, all right. We will be checking in on that, on the concerns, and it'll be all a part of what we're doing for the streetscape, and we can also look and get a report done of really what would be the gain in diagonal versus having diagonal and not. So, but we'll also work on seeing if we can talk to the other building owners, try to acquire that empty parking lot. So, yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, council, next you have adoption of the consent calendar, and if there isn't any items that need to be pulled off this evening, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, that takes care of our council packet business. And so next is business from the council. And Bessie, do you have anything?
Oh, I just want to mention that last night they had the Lynn County Victim Impact Panel 2015 Tree of Remembrance Ceremony, and I've never gone before. And it was very moving, very appropriate ceremony. They just hung their, unfortunately, they just hung their 100th ornament for people who have been killed by drunken drivers and stuff. But I was told that afterwards that Sergeant Hayes says he doesn't think there's ever been a council person there. And so I just want to, say that it's very short, but it's very well worth going to. So, if you can consider it next year, it's very, very moving. I was very, very glad that I went. And so, that's all
Well, thank
I
you
have.
for going, because I did have it on my calendar. I wanted to go, and I had got so detained all day with so much stuff to take care of that I, ended up missing
almost
it. But
forgot
thank you
to.
for going.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
It was nice, but that's all.
Okay, all right, Bill?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Dick?
Nothing.
Okay, all right, Rich?
Yes, with Amedeck coming forward with the proposal that they had, listening to this the other day at the county, do we as a city know the areas that we have set aside for inside our urban growth boundary that are going to be restricted because of wetlands? And I don't mean, because I recognize last time when we were dealing with the property over next to the junior high, there was quite a difference in the amount of property that we thought was going to be wetland and then how much was wetland. Have we made a study to know how much is actually available? Because down the road, if we have someone walk up and say, we need 42 acres, and we don't know whether or not that is actually, we have 48 acres, but some of it's wetland, we don't know how much of it is actually good. Has that been done?
Yeah, Rich, we do have we have a local, what we call a local wetlands inventory. The problem, of course, with the inventory is that it's not every piece gets onto our inventory. And to really know, and this is, you may recall, we had a situation with an apartment development over on Oak Street, where it did not appear on any of our inventories, and yet and it probably could have been built and would have been built without incident, yet someone complained and said, ooh, they're building and there's wetlands there. And that brought in the Division of State Lands. They determined that, yes, the soil qualified that property as a wetlands and triggered some fairly expensive remediation costs. So I think the answer to your question is both yes and no. Yes, we have an idea of where wetlands are in the city. You can also safely assume that just about anything on the valley floor probably contains wetlands. So that anytime somebody comes to us and says, well, we need some property, one of the questions that's going to be asked is, has there been a wetlands delineation done on that particular piece of property? Now, we participated with the COG in having some of our major industrial sites delineated.
Right.
And so we know those, and I think there were 20 sites that we, in the valley, or in the mid-Willamette Valley region, that were included in that. And then some property owners have done their own. But you're going to have a request coming to you on the property that we got, commonly known as the Brandis property.
Right.
To do a further delineation on that, because we're now receiving interest from people who want to buy it, and in terms of determining its value, we sort of have to know more precisely what exactly the wetland situation is. So it's and the other piece of this is that short of doing a major investment,
which is a bunch of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, I think the wetlands delineation in question is over $20,000, if my recollection is right. Short of doing that on each individual piece of property, that's the only way you're really going to know, is if somebody's paid for that. So there are a lot of them where we don't know with that level of precision.
Well, that all leads to the final item, which is, if we have space that is outside the city but inside the urban growth boundary, and we know that we have a limited amount of what we have inside the city available, I would ask that we be proactive in looking outside the city limits to change the boundary of the city limits so we have more what we think we have instead of more what we do have, if you follow that reasoning, available. Because when someone walks up and says, I need whatever, you're not going to have time to go through all of it and then find out, yes, it is, or no, it isn't, and then get it in the city, and then, go through all that. They're long gone. So that's, I guess I would ask us to be proactive in moving the city limits out in places where we know that there's a good shot at us having buildable land to make up for that difference in the wetland that we are losing.
We have been proactive in the sense that we did participate in this, and are still participating, in a nonprofit formed by the COG to look at the issue of trying to resolve wetlands issues prospectively rather than, when it's too late. And there are going to be some questions, and it's not just us, it's Lebanon, Corvallis, several cities are interested in that same question, and we're sort of hoping that maybe one of the options is to look at getting grant money to potentially develop our own wetlands bank. So even though a site that we think is available for industrial use might be constrained by wetlands, that instead of having to add to the cost of it and making it therefore unattractive to someone, you have the potential of using your own bank
to mitigate.
mitigate. So there are some things that we're doing. We have not looked at an urban growth boundary expansion or annexation of land inside the urban growth boundary into the city limit. I don't think we've had even a request along those lines in quite a while, but that's another issue the council wants to take up.
And we still have quite a bit of inventory in the city limits, is annexed with the Pepsi properties, 250 acres. There's the Henshaw one that's 100 acres. Then we got the Brandis. We do have available, industrial land with the Pepsi property. So the more you add on, the more inventory available will take away less interest off Pepsi property too. But, yeah, Floyd?
Well, this really plays into a discussion that you had when Helen Byrne-Sharp was here, in that prior to the wetlands becoming one of the big flags that everybody looks at, we had a buildable inventory of whatever it was, 20-year supply. When you come in and superimpose wetlands on them, whether they're the local inventory, which is based upon soil maps and our best guess at the time, that reduces that buildable inventory by some value. When you go out and do the ground truth, it reduces it even more. Now, it's either Newburgh or McMinnville has been trying to adjust their urban growth boundary for over 15 years to take up for the effect of losing that buildable inventory. It's taken them that long even to get it considered by LCDC. It goes back all the way to Senate Bill 100. If you really believe that Senate Bill 100 was to protect farm and forest, then we need to build inside the urban growth boundary. If then you superimpose wetlands in there, you've got wetlands competing with saving farm and forest because you got to push your UGBs out to accommodate that net. This is an issue that the league needs to push heavily with the legislature. I think they're the only ones that could affect it. If you're going to have an urban growth boundary to accommodate urbanization, you're going to have some sacrifices if you really want to protect farm and forest. If you don't, then make it easier to adjust urban growth boundaries. So I think this is a political issue that needs to be taken with the legislature.
Yeah, and in fairness to the league, they did actually get some reforms, revisions of the urban growth boundary expansion process through, I believe it was in the last session of the legislature, but I don't think anybody would say that they solved the problem, but they did at least try and help address. It's both been in Woodburn and McMinnville are the two sort of classic cases where they've been years trying to expand their urban growth boundaries. But yeah, it's not an easy task even now.
Well, I guess what I point out is it is a conversation that needs to happen one way or another. Whatever the solution is, we need to be looking for it. Thank you.
Anything else? Is that it, Rich?
That's it.
Okay, Ray?
Yes, the marijuana issue. I voted no on the first reading, and I want to lay out what I'm planning on doing on next Wednesday, so there's no surprises. And I'll give some background as to where I'm coming to this decision. And that is when Sean presented to us 6 different options, and at the meeting we were going to be discussing them, I honestly thought that was just going to be the starting point, but it was real obvious that it was almost what I considered a fait accompli, that there was a decision going to be made that night, and it was what I conceived to be the worst of the worst, which is why I called it a nuclear option. So with that in mind, I said, well, there's got to be another way to try and bring us back to a compromise of some sort, whatever that may be. And to my way of thinking, a compromise means that both sides have to gag a little or a lot, but they both have to gag to make it a true compromise. So I started looking through the city charter, city codes, ordinances, et cetera, and I believe I came up with a way to force that issue. Bounced it off of West city staff, city attorneys, and while they said, yes, you can do that, apparently, it's a technicality or a tool I found in our rules and regulations, it potentially has some ugly ramifications. Having said that, I then floated a couple of more what I thought were plausible compromises, and I had to gag on both of them that I came up with, and received no positive response. So I'm left with the only tool that I have. Well, there is another tool. It was suggested that I could possibly just not be there, not show up. I thought that was a pretty chicken way of trying to do things. So I'm going to just use the tools that are in our existing code and ordinances, et cetera. And it is next Wednesday I will abstain during that vote. And we'll see what happens after that. And if anybody wants to address that, including the city attorney, have at it. But I'm not trying to surprise anybody. I honestly thought maybe I'm being, or was, or am quite naive in thinking that by laying out those plans up in advance, including to the mayor, that it would help drive a conversation towards a compromise. That didn't happen, so here we are.
Okay. The compromise, as I stated, is very subjective, and it just was not as much of a compromise, so. And so regarding the abstaining, I will bring that up when it comes to my time. So Floyd, is there anything you had this evening?
I've not weighed in on any conversation on what Ray just said, but, I've looked at some issues from my perspective. We're all elected by the public to make choices and to vote. If we have a conflict of interest where we have a potential of our own income being affected, I think declaring a conflict and not voting is reasonable. To abstain, I think, is neglecting our duty as elected officials. We vote the way we believe we need to. We win some, we lose some, but the democratic process goes on. To abstain, actually, in my opinion, blocks the democratic process. One person can basically hold the council hostage with a vote or abstention. And I don't think that's what this country was built upon. I don't think that's what our city is about.
I agree.
I do too.
So with that, Councilor Kopsinski and I have had a conversation on this, and basically what is in our code, and with our city attorney. So basically what happens then is Councilor Kopsinski can abstain, and then there would not be enough votes for action. So when it comes to the second reading for the banning the marijuana, then the intent is to abstain, and then it's going to block a vote, and there won't be any action. So what I would like to ask is if the council would like to consider to have staff bring back an ordinance that would be changing our code and identifying in our code what abstaining, what action that would mean. And so would you like to explain that, Jim?
Yeah. For the benefit of the tens of thousands of people watching on television, let me explain what this is all about. Under the terms of our charter, 4 votes of the council are required to take any action. So you could have a meeting where there was a quorum present, perhaps 4 members of the council were present at the meeting, and the mayor, that constituted a quorum. If a majority, 3-1, voted in favor of something, it still would not pass, because under our charter, 4 votes are required. The only circumstance wherein the mayor votes to break a tie, I mean, the mayor could vote to break a 2-2 tie, but it would be meaningless, because you still have to have 4 votes under our charter to take any action. So traditionally, if there's a 3-3 split on the council, the mayor votes, breaks the tie, that constitutes 4 votes, and action is taken. We have, under our charter, the council has the authority to adopt rules to supplement the charter. Section 14 of the charter says it, referring to the council, shall adopt rules for the government of its members and proceedings. In order to do that, the council has adopted an entire chapter in the Municipal Code 2.04 that supplements the charter about how council meetings will be conducted. You have a provision specifically on point with regard to voting and abstentions. Let me read that to you. It says, unless a member of the council states that he/she is not voting, his or her silence shall be recorded as an affirmative vote. Now again, that only applies if someone is simply silent. If a member of the council states that he or she is not voting, his or her vote is not considered either for or against the proposition. So what Councilor Kopczynski is proposing is if he abstains and thereby creates a situation where there is not a 3-3 tie, there is 3 versus 2, the mayor can't vote in that circumstance, no action is taken, it effectively blocks the adoption of an ordinance unless you had 4 members of the council otherwise voting in the affirmative. Now, that provision is a creature of the council, it is an ordinance of the council, it's not in the charter, and the council has the authority to change that provision if you wish. If 4 votes of the council want to direct me to prepare an ordinance, I will prepare an ordinance that would essentially say that if a member of the council states that he or she is not voting, his or her vote shall be deemed a vote against the proposition. In that circumstance, you would have the 3-3 tie, the mayor would vote. It also has the advantage that if a member were abstaining because of an ethical conflict, they wouldn't be taking an action in favor of somehow that would benefit them in the conflict because they'd be voting no. So it is a mechanism to change this rule of the council if that is what you want to do. And I think that is what the mayor is referring to.
You need to have council direction to direct staff to bring back an ordinance with that language change. And it is something that I think it might not be just this issue, but it could always happen on other issues. And I don't think that's a path that we want to go down with our city. And I would hate to see that in the future if it ever came to a budget issue, where all of a sudden we can't even get a budget adopted. But there's a lot of ramifications to going down this path, and that's why I think it really needs to be cleaned up and make sure that we can kind of prevent it from happening. When someday all of us might not be here, and do we want to have future councils doing that on almost every issue? So, Floyd?
A couple clarifications, and maybe for Jim. The restriction for the type of voting we have with only the mayor voting in tie, that doesn't apply to any other city action, planning commission, budget committee, CARA, for instance. It's simply a majority of the quorum that's present.
That's correct, and indeed in many, and perhaps most cities, there is not a similar provision of essentially a supermajority or a provision that would prevent the mayor from voting. The chairman of the planning commission votes. If the mayor is absent and the president of the council is conducting the meeting, he or she votes. So it exists in other charters in Oregon, but it is in the minority.
Okay. The other question is, well, we're not governed by Roberts because we've not chosen to do so. What does Roberts say if there's an abstention?
Roberts is similar to what I can write in that Roberts generally provides that a vote, that silence is customarily counted as a vote with the affirmative, and Roberts would be more inclined to counter a speaking abstention, count it as a negative for purposes of determining whether or not, for the count of votes. But Roberts is a little vague in this regard because Roberts also points out that an abstention is not really a vote. So Roberts doesn't specifically provide an example. And, of course, Roberts, under the terms, you have a provision also in your rules with regard to Roberts rules, and you specifically provide that the council shall be guided by Roberts Rules of Order, but then you say no action of the council shall be rendered invalid for failing to comply with the Roberts Rules of Order. And that makes good sense because, with all due respect, you routinely violate Roberts Rules of Order. Roberts Rules of Order would say that you would not debate or discuss a subject until it has been moved and seconded. This council is loath to move until you have already discussed an item to your satisfaction.
Makes sense to me.
In addition, even if you were strictly following Robert's Rules of Order, you can, by 4-vote majority, move to suspend the rules anytime you wish. So Robert's Rules is a guide, but again, remember, Roberts was written, I believe, at about the time of the Civil War to help largely church boards, and it can provide guidance, but it is not a requirement.
Okay, questions, Bessie?
Jim, with what you would bring back, does it only deal with the word abstain? Because the 4-council vote has worked all this time, and I just really...
Well, the 4-council vote would not be touched, because you cannot, by ordinance, change something in the charter.
Okay, that's...
So the 4-council vote, the mayor's role in breaking ties only, those are both provided for in the charter and cannot be touched by a council ordinance. The charter, however, is silent as to how to deal with abstentions.
Okay.
You have adopted in the past an ordinance saying how you will deal with abstentions, and that ordinance says that if one verbally abstains, announces an abstention, it's not counted for any purpose. Now, you could change that, but it is your choice whether or not you want to do it and how you want to do it. I tried to figure out how to do it with the least possible change to the existing ordinance. The proposal that I would bring forward to you would strike 7 words and add 4. It would simply change that instead of saying his or her vote is not considered either for or against, it would say his or her vote shall be deemed a vote against. That's the least change that I can make and alter the way the votes are counted. And again, that requires 4 votes to decide to do that.
But at least it will define the word basically abstain. So then there's an action with that word abstain. So that's going to end up helping, to prevent.
It doesn't define the word abstain. It
just
changes, it fundamentally makes a 180-degree change in how an abstention is counted in this circumstance.
Right.
But that, again, I believe that is within your power. I believe that is consistent with the charter because in that circumstance, it would only apply when you still have 4 votes. When the mayor is counted as a member of the council, as she is, there would still be 4 votes, actual votes, not abstention, 4 votes for any proposition. It would only apply in that circumstance. And again, I'm not advocating, I'm trying to stay out of this one, but I'm tasked with giving you options, and that is the option that I can give you if you wish.
Okay. So Ray and then Rich.
What is so disconcerting to me about this whole process is that trying to do this just reinforces my belief, rather than trying to come to some sort of a palatable compromise, we're still trying to figure out how can we make it absolute, so that there is no compromise whatsoever, and that we will in fact have a full ban on recreational sales and a vote in November. And I think that's it's boxed me into a corner, because if nobody's willing to compromise, then I tried to find, and apparently I have found, a tool to help get us back to square one. And rather than trying to work through a compromise, we're trying to figure out how can we thwart this process and keep the ban and ordinance going. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, Rich and then Floyd.
When you say there's no compromise, when you spoke to me about this, you basically said, my way or the highway. That was it. Allow medical folks to sell recreational, which puts marijuana right next to a whole bunch of kids, and that's not compromise at all in any way, shape, or form. I mean, we're talking about trust with both the marijuana issue and this issue. Right now, we have a system that we win and we lose. We count the number of heads, and sometime you win, sometime you lose, and we all smile when we're finished, knowing we made our argument the way we made it, and we either won or we lost. What you're talking about is moving it to Washington, D.C. That kind of a system that says win at any cost, no matter what. It's the political slashing of tires, if you will. It's the we'll just have to pass it so we can find out what's in it. Or the Harry Reid, we will deem that it has passed because we voted on something that looked like it before. I don't think that is what we were put in these chairs for. Now, the other half of that trust is, who are you asking us to trust with your all-or-nothing system? The guy, excuse me, let me finish, please. The guy who tells the world that he's going to have a smoking room in a medical marijuana facility that is clearly illegal? Is that trust? Or that same guy who gets arrested for DUI? We're talking about the original medical marijuana people who showed up here and said they were going to give this stuff away. It was all about medicine. One brother then accuses the other of felonies and is kicked out, and the other brother steals the money and runs off to what, Thailand? That's trust? Is it trust when you're asked, oh, gee, sell me some oxygen, and, well, I don't sell to bong makers. Oh, we don't do that. No. And then the stuff is delivered the second or third time around, and the door opens, and there's crack pipes and bongs all over the place. And when he is told we don't do business with people who do that, he then holds the $2,800 piece of equipment hostage. Now, is that something you trust? Is it trust when in that same family a person is arrested for selling chemical narcotics? That's not trust. How do you trust people who do that? You're asking us to allow people to sell marijuana right next to where somebody lives. I don't see where that's reasonable.
Okay, Lloyd?
Well, I understand Ray's argument, but I would make the point that I see this, there's the content of the issue that Ray's speaking of. I'm more concerned with the process by which this council makes future decisions. It's going to be the long-term effect on the community on how we make decisions. There will be different council members here making different decisions on different issues. And if we have an ability to circumvent what I believe is our duty to vote, then why are we here? Whether one side wins or loses on the specific issue, Ray, I don't think that's the most important piece of this discussion. It's the fundamental piece of how do we operate in a democratic process and the impact of that to the future.
Okay, so I think it was Ray first, then Bill.
Well, again, I could have just brought this up next week and not told anybody what I had inferred and the technicality, if you want to call it, a tool or otherwise, found to try and bring this back. I still have not heard, even yet this evening, decry what I'm trying to do. It's in the ground rules of the system that we already have. Somebody offer a palatable compromise. And again, a compromise means we both have to suck it up and gag a little. So until somebody does, I'm boxed into a corner from my perspective.
But I would,
But
with Bill's
what
permission,
about the
yeah.
compromise of looking at this and reviewing it after we go through the development code changes?
That is just a maybe, and that was brought up before. That is not a definitive.
But that's where I say compromise is so subjective, and it's,
No,
you
it's not,
know,
it can be, anyway.
what one person
I've
thinks is a
already compromised
compromise, the other
We've
doesn't.
already had this discussion, so.
So, I know.
But-
Okay,
Go ahead, Bill.
yeah, Bill.
Oh, well, from this end of the dais with my chair slightly turned and observing the procedures, it's very clear that both sides of the issue, or I should say that people representing both sides of the issue are just political maneuvering. I mean, Ray has a way that he thinks he can stop things, and what's being proposed that Jim explained is a way to counter that. I think we need to look at the bigger picture, and it appears that what we need is to change the charter. And we could change the charter where it just takes a simple majority, so a 3-2 would pass. And it's, more discussion, we'll have to have it in additional meetings in the future, change the charter and allow the mayor to vote. In many cities, the mayor votes on every issue. So if somebody did abstain, the mayor still votes, and you might have the fourth vote, or you might have the 3 votes majority that you need. I mean, without doing a story problem of how many different combinations there are of people voting and not voting and so forth and so on. But I think that's maybe a little better overall long-term solution. I know it's a little more laborious in terms of
I agree
putting
with
a
you.
measure on the ballot maybe for the May primary or something like that. But that's my 2 cents worth from the cheap seats over here.
Floyd.
Well, Ray, as I said, we've not had any conversation, period, on this subject, but
We did one.
compromise, we had a vote on which I was on the losing end of on a 4-3 vote on the medical marijuana issue. To me, they're tied together, they're just different applications. And I didn't come back crying, I didn't abstain on that issue to do the same thing, to not allow it to come forward. We went forward, it voted. They've been separated in time by several months, but they're all part of the same discussion, in my view. To say that we haven't compromised is, we brought medical marijuana into the community. Now the question is, do we bring recreational marijuana into the community into this format? You've drawn an arbitrary line in time to separate the issues, and I don't agree with that.
Well, it kind of brings back memories on the recent art ordinance, because Floyd, you wanted to have some changes to it, but there was actually the motion, and you were on the losing end to not do any changes. So there was no compromise taking place in that ordinance also. But you didn't turn around and you accepted it and went on, so. And that's how I've seen for 2 decades, this council always has done. When you make a decision on an issue and you vote, and if you're on the losing end, you go on. So you move on, and it happens many times, but yeah, so Bessie?
I think Wes has something to say, and I can talk after him.
Well, I'll just repeat what I've said before, that I think the question before you here is whether or not you believe that there should be a mechanism for a minority of the city council to defeat the will of the majority of the council. independent of what the issue is. And there are, one of the problems that you face is that even by bringing back the ordinance that Jim has crafted, you close one loophole, but you leave another loophole still in existence that allows a minority to defeat the will of the majority. And the only way you're going to fix that is, as Bill suggested, which is to go back to the charter and go the direction that most councils in Oregon go, and that is, not, what's unique to Albany, at least in my experience, and I'm not aware of any other cities in the state that do this, is to have that 4-vote majority requirement. Typically, most charters in the state say a majority of those voting and present, of a quorum. As long as you have a quorum, it's a majority of the quorum. And so that's a decision that you would need to, you might want to weigh as you consider the possibilities before you.
Dick?
Yeah. In a week or two, I will have been on this council for 25 years. And I find over time that a more conservative approach is often the best, where you want to, particularly when you think you want to change something, and if a minority of the council feels extremely strongly that it's the wrong way to go, I think change is probably a bad thing. And therefore, if an ordinance comes up suggesting that we change our rules that allow an abstention to count as an absence, I, for one, will vote against it. I think that's a bad move at this point.
Would you think
I
it's
found myself in a minority most of those 25 years. To be mayor at one point, which accomplished exactly what I wanted to do, even though I was a minority of 1 against 6. But I think this change is a bad idea.
So you think it's okay for councilors to abstain and then not have any action whatsoever?
I do.
You do?
Yes. And we can still resort to just plain boycotting the meeting.
And doing what? Boycotting?
Boycotting the meeting, so you don't have a full council.
Mm-hmm. And so you think that, would you like to see that as a common practice?
I might do it.
Mm-hmm. So, and you think that's what folks elect us to do?
I don't know if I'll run again, but I probably will.
Essie?
Well, this is disturbing to me, because since I've been on, and this is my 13th year, there have been times when I've gone home, told my husband, well, it was Council 3, Bessie none, but there's nothing I could do. It was the majority, like Floyd says, it's a democratic way. It disturbs me that we're even having to think of going the way that Jim is, and I'm not blaming you, Jim, trust me, but to bring up an ordinance like that, it's like, I don't understand, Ray, I don't understand why you can't accept that the majority rules. That's the way this country was built on and is now. And to me, it reminds me of like the kids playing in a sandbox, and Ray doesn't like the way the rules are going, and so it's like, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And
if that's
excuse me,
true, I agree.
Excuse me, I've got the floor, okay? And I hate to see this, because this council, Albany City Council, has always, well, at least since I've been on it, has been known that, okay, yeah, if you don't win, yeah, you might be upset for a while, but you come back and either you try to change it or you accept it. But you don't retaliate and use some tactics that just are not what we were elected to do. And it really disturbs me that we even have to go this way, and because it sounds like, okay, you're doing this, so we're going to make sure that you can't do this, and it's just like kids fighting. And I think we're adults here, and that if you don't get the vote, you have to accept it and go on with life. Because this really disturbs me, and I don't, and you know, if this were Blue, the dog, I mean, we didn't all agree on that, but we went on with life, and then he escaped. But, you know, so this really disturbs me, and I hope that there are some little different changes in thinking.
Dick?
I have to agree with you completely, Bessie. And the mayor and you trying to change the rules at the last minute so you can have your way is just exactly what
I just said, I don't really like to do this.
You want
I
to
don't
change
wanna
the
do it.
ordinance,
No.
or the rules, so that we don't have to have the 4 votes. So,
No, I want the 4 votes because that's the way it has been, that's the way it's
you're
worked
wrong,
for
you're wrong.
years.
Dick, I think it's two things. Technically, if we bring back this ordinance before the marijuana ordinance, Ray's already said he will abstain with it. It won't go anywhere.
It's like
We
playing a
won't have the
basketball
ordinance.
game, and I say, well, hey, my team is great at shooting foul shots. I think a foul shot ought to count for 3 points instead of 1 for this game. So,
Yeah, so, it's true. Yeah.
I fully agree. There are very, very passionate views on both sides of this issue, have been from day one. And to Bessie's point, I fully concur that the majority should run this process in this particular instance. And that being said, had we done that, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because both of our wards and the entire city of Albany in total voted in favor of Measure 91. And therefore, I believe that we shouldn't even be having this conversation whatsoever. So if you're going to try and drive it to a total ban and absolute nothing until the end of November of 2016, then I simply was looking for a mechanism by which I can say, how can we bring it back to square one and have a conversation about a compromise of some sort, where we both have to give a little, or a lot, be that as it may. I've already bent over backwards, I think, but I'm not hearing anything from the other side.
But I think this is a prime example here in this conversation this evening where there is a lot of divisiveness over this issue. I think that's what even solidifies it more of a reason to go to the voters, let them decide. So, and I really think that's our best route to go, is because we've been targeted from people that it shouldn't even be 7 members making this decision, and to just go back out to the voters. And I think that's our best route. I mean, look what this is causing on our council. I have never seen this in all my years. And I think it's an ugly path that we want to go down. And I would really hate to see more of this divisiveness
well,
in the
let's
future
just
on
follow our
issues.
rules and let the ball fall where it'll fall.
Well, and that's what we
Just
did,
quit
Dick.
this business
We
of
followed the
trying to change the
rules.
chart.
The vote was made, and the vote was done. So, but we've got folks that are not wanting to abide by the outcome. You've been many times on the losing end, but did you come out and want to be obstructive to it? And for a decision that was made?
I came back out of change, yeah.
So,
I did.
but to get something, but you went through a process to get your
We got our
votes.
ambulances back.
Right.
Because I fought back.
But you went through the process. This is trying to obstruct a vote, and that's what's not right.
It's part of our rule book, it's legal, it's right.
But we've never known about this with abstaining. That's why, if this is going to be a common practice, we better get it cleaned up, and we better get it in our code.
Anything up.
So,
There's no need to clean anything up.
so you want this to continue then?
Amen, yes.
Okay, then I think we differ on that. I would hate to see that with our city, having councilors abstain and obstruct votes and decisions being made with that. So, council, I need to know, would you like staff to bring back an ordinance and sort of identifying over this process when it comes to abstaining?
Yes.
Okay, I need it in a motion.
So moved.
Okay,
You know what I mean.
yes. All right. Is there-
Mary, the mind
For Mary's
reader.
benefit,
Yeah.
this would be a motion to...
Motion is to have the city attorney bring back an ordinance as he described.
Mhm.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I don't
Is
like
there
it.
more discussion? Hate to almost ask if there's more discussion.
We just did what Jim said we do.
Yep, I think we did discussion. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, roll call.
Olson,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
excuse me, I called that.
I'm sorry, yes.
I called that out of order, not that
Okay.
it makes a difference. Collins.
Yes.
Johnson said yes.
Yes.
Kellum.
Yes.
Kopsinski.
No.
Coburn.
No.
Okay, and I say yes. So, okay, with that, you've got enough direction on that, Jim? Okay, all right. That's all that I had from business, from the council, and unless anybody else had something. Not, Wes, anything? Okay, staff have anything?
Welcome to guerrilla tactics.
Our next meeting is Monday.
Our next
Oh, we
meeting,
were
and
gonna-
actually, we needed to find out, there's not much on the agenda.
There's a ton of things on the agenda on Monday.
Yeah.
On Monday.
Yeah,
Wes was
actually,
going to bring that up.
I
Okay.
failed in my one responsibility this evening. Sorry, still
Okay.
getting over the cold. You have a ton of stuff on Monday's agenda and almost nothing on Wednesday's agenda. The only thing on Wednesday's agenda of significance was a report from Jim Merriman on the LBCC program to the worker training program. And Jim has apparently indicated to Kate that he'd be willing to push that back to January if that's the council's pleasure. Another option is to just go ahead with that report and to move some of the things off of Monday's agenda and push them onto Wednesday's agenda. So it's really the council's choice, what your preference is. Would you prefer to have a fairly long meeting on Monday and not have the meeting on Wednesday, or?
Is anybody absent? Bessie, were
Bessie's
you
gonna be
I'm
absent.
gone
on Monday?
on Wednesday. No, I'll be here
Oh,
Monday.
Wednesday, but you'll be here Monday. Will everybody be here Monday?
That's why we scheduled the
Picture
meeting that
taking's
way.
on Monday, right?
I can't remember.
What was that?
Yeah, picture taking?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. So, does the council then want to cancel Wednesday?
Please.
So, okay. All right, we will just have a longer session on Monday.
And we'll be at
that's
7:15.
We are meeting
And
at
it's-
7:15 on Monday. We're treating it
Yeah.
as a regular city council meeting because of the holidays.
And that
No.
will include the marijuana ordinance.
Yes.
Correct.
Now, when you say that
And Jim's ordinance.
Rich was quick to jump out and say, yeah, no Wednesday meeting, please.
Well, I can have choir practice so I can
Aye.
do practice in Salem on next Wednesday, because that's when the choir is doing that.
I guess when Marilyn and Wes say there's a lot on the agenda, it's a long meeting, I'm not interested in sitting here till midnight. I would vote for
It's
two
not that
meetings.
long. It's
So
not
a little
that
more, like, subjective is, a long meeting. or-
It's not that long. There are several short reports. The primary issue was we needed everybody here because there are a couple of items, now make that 4, where we need a full council to vote. So,
So the long and short of it, Bill, is we never know
I understand.
who's going to show up and how long it's going to take. We are one of the few councils remaining in the world where whoever shows up at our meeting can determine how long it lasts. But, yeah, if things go as we anticipate, it would not last that long.
I'm fine with it. 3 or
So
4
we
hour
will
meeting.
So we will meet Monday at
Long at
December 7th, 7:15 PM. Anything else? Okay, with that, we are adjourned.